Welcome back, guys. Today is going to be the day that I am presenting my preseason top 25 to you all. I have been looking forward to this moment, and today I'm going to be dedicating a few seconds to about a minimum max talking about each team in my top 25 and why I believe they are there. So let's just get right into it, and before we do, I want to mention two things. Being that this is the year of Saban's assistants, Texas A&M and Georgia are ranked very high on my list because of their high amounts of returning starters, and because I do think that both of these teams are in the proper positions to finally beat Alabama, though we'll find out later in the video whether I actually think they will clutch up and do it. And the second question, I think, is do the Big Ten and Pac-12 recover? Last year, the only good team out of that entire bunch was Ohio State, and the rest of the Big Ten seems to be on kind of a downswing. They certainly were last year, and the Pac-12 was not in any good shape last year. These two conferences got the least amount of playing time, and we kind of know the least about them. I think they're the most volatile entering this year. So let's just kick it right off and get to number 25, UCLA. UCLA returns a lot of starters at every position. Chip Kelly's been improving every year, and I think they finished second in the Pac-12 South with a powerful offense. Their weakness is in their defense, and I have them ranked at 25th because I do need to see more out of them before I can fully believe in them and rank them higher, but I think they're going to have a good year. Number 24, University of Central Florida, and a lot of people haven't really been ranking this team, but I have seen some more knowledgeable people and even some experts just looking at this team and telling us that it could be a rising team, and that's because Dylan Gabriel's a star at the quarterback position. Gus Malzahn went 12-2 at Auburn his first year and is now in a far easier conference. And I think that UCF is going to be the American Conference champion. They will lose to Cincinnati in the regular season, rematch, and then beat them to complete the epic first-year Gus Malzahn trend that he had begun at Auburn. Number 23, you got the Kentucky Wildcats. And Kentucky, they've had some great years under Mark Stoops for being at Kentucky, but this year they returned 7 offensive starters, 4 on the defense, but they're always solid on defense, so that's never a concern. And they pick up Will Levis from Penn State in the transfer portal. As I've said again, they always play solid defense, and despite the fact that their secondary coach, Steve Clinkscale, is now at Michigan, I believe their secondary will still play very well, and I think they will finish 3rd in the SEC East. We move on to number 22, Minnesota. Now, Minnesota is a team that it's sort of volatile, and that is because despite the fact they return a veteran QB in Tanner Morgan and veteran running back in Muhammad Ibrahim, they do lose Rashad Bateman, who was a main player on offense. We'll see how good they are compared to last year, but I have faith in PJ Fleck. They return all of their offensive line, which needs to improve, and they return a good portion of their defense, which also needs to improve. And they didn't make any staff changes, but I think they finish 3rd behind Iowa and Wisconsin in the Big Ten West. Number 21, got the Liberty Flames. This will be Hugh Freeze's 3rd year there, with star QB Malik Willis returning, along with 16 other seniors total. And I have their only loss being to Hugh Freeze's former team in Ole Miss. This team will be the team to beat out of FBS Independence. And I'm including Notre Dame in that list as well. We'll get to them later. They're a little higher on this list. And ironically enough, after Hugh Freeze, we get number 20, Ole Miss. You have Matt Corral returning and a loaded offense. The defense needs to improve, but DJ Durkin should be able to do that. He did pretty well at Michigan, and I'm a Michigan fan, so I do believe that he'll be able to do that there. Lane Kiffin is a coach that certainly seems to be on the rise, and this year will certainly tell. I have them finishing 3rd in the SEC West losing to Alabama, A&M, and a shocking loss to in-state rival Mississippi State, headed by Mike, guy who upsets top teams, Leach. Number 19, got the Oregon Ducks. They return QB Tyler Show, who's supposedly a star, and they return a lot of players on all sides of the ball. I'm kind of a skeptic of them, though, because I look at last year and they had a decent amount of people returning last year. They were in a good position, and them losing to Oregon State and California, who were not by any stretch as good teams last year, I need to see more of them before I can rank them as a playoff caliber team. But they certainly have the talent to do so, and they'll have a solid defense. And knowing how Justin Herbert came from Oregon, Tyler Show should be able to be a solid quarterback as well. Number 18, also Oregon is my Pac-12 champion despite having 3 losses. Number 18, you got Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina basically returns everyone, and I think this will be Jamie Chadwell's it'll be a better year for him than it was last year, and they're my second team in the top 25 that is going to have an undefeated regular season and be playing the championship game. They're going to be a 13-0 team, champion of the Sun Belt. Louisiana, who just missed my top 25, would be right behind them in that category right there. And after Coastal, you get Texas. Now Texas under new coach, sorry about that, new coach Steve Sarkisian. I do have more faith in him than Tom Herman, but we'll see how this plays out. I think Bijan Robinson is the apparent star running back that kind of seemingly came out of the blue this offseason. Looks to be pretty good at what he does. Texas will, as always, they won't be a part of the Big 12 championship game. They probably won't even be a part of the conversation midway through the season, but they're still good, and I do think that they will win 9 or 10 games, and 10 if you include possibly a bowl win, or they shock everyone and only have 2 losses in the regular season. Number 16, you have Notre Dame, who has one of the lowest, I think, returning production rates in the, ever. Out of all 130 teams, they have one of the lowest. It's shocking. Ian Book left for the draft. I believe they return running back Kyron Williams, which will be good. Notre Dame does play solid for the most part on both sides of the ball, but I do think this year will be a down year with the lack of returning production and the fact that they face North Carolina, Cincinnati, Wisconsin, and I do think that Florida State will most likely cause some issues against Notre Dame week 1. And after Notre Dame, you have Miami. Now, the Hurricanes have struggled in recent years, but they return De'Aaron King. Manny Diaz is now calling the defense, and he's a far better defensive coordinator than really any other option, being honest. It'll be interesting to see how he handles the head coach position and calling the defensive plays, but I just have to give him the benefit of the doubt here for now. Miami will likely finish, in my opinion, they will finish second in the Coastal Division. ESPN's FPI has them challenging for first place and has them in the championship game. However, that is up to number 14, North Carolina. North Carolina, they did lose, I believe, a wide receiver, 1 or 2 running backs. They lost a lot of impact skill players on the offensive side of the ball. They do return Sam Howell, though. The line, a great portion of the defense. And Mac Brown brought in an amazing recruiting class for North Carolina standards and looks to be on the upswing here. I do think they will get a few upsets in the regular season, but I do think they will represent the Coastal Division in the championship game and fall to Clemson. And next up, we have number 13, Utah. Now, Utah, this is Kyle Whittingham's year. A lot of players return. The defense will be solid as it always is, and they return the majority of the defense. Charlie Brewer transferred in from Baylor, along with another quarterback and 2 running backs, which were the only 2 positions they needed on offense, was running back and QB, and they filled it up with good players through the portal. I do think they lose to USC. They have a hard time winning in the Coliseum. But besides that, Utah should beat everyone on the regular schedule, including Oregon, before falling to Oregon at a neutral site field in the Pac-12 championship game. They will be the Pac-12 runner-ups, champions of the Pac-12 South. Indiana at number 12 is kind of a different story. I have Indiana ranked higher than Utah because I look at Michael Penix Jr., Ty Fryfogle, and just the solid defense they had for having probably worse talent than Utah and playing in a tougher division, tougher conference. And Indiana, this team in the East, is the team to challenge Ohio State this year. Not Penn State, not Michigan. Tom Allen has proven himself thus far. I do not think Indiana last year was a fluke, but what depends and what makes the season, along with Michael Penix Jr. being the strength, how does he do despite his ACL being torn? Coming off an ACL injury can be tough, and I have Indiana finishing second in the East. They only lose 1 game in their division, and that is to an Ohio State team who again looks to be a playoff team. Iowa, number 11, who will beat Indiana, is just ahead of them because they have the better conference record. They return less starters than Indiana, but Kirk Ferentz is on a roll. He's had two seasons in a row where he's ranked in the top. And like that stretch from, I believe, 2002 to 2004, he's going to get a third one right here. They're always solid in the trenches and with tight ends. They lost Smith Marset, but despite that being a bummer here, I think they will still push for second in the Big Ten West, losing to Iowa State and Big Ten West Division champion Wisconsin. Cincinnati is in an interesting position. I put them at 10th. However, I've mentioned that they would lose to UCF in the championship game and then also lose, and as you can see, a regular season game, and that is to Indiana. So you may be wondering, why do I still have them in the top 10? And I just have to say, Desmond Ridder, and you have Mike Tressel as DC. And you may be thinking, well, Mike Tressel's, he's not as big of a name as their previous DC. Gosh, I can't think of his name. But he left for Notre Dame. And Mike Tressel led, and I'm saying this as a Michigan fan, some amazing defenses at Michigan State with pretty similar talent to what Cincy has here. And Cincy, again, like a lot of these group of 5 teams and like a lot of these teams in the top 25, return most of their starters. Desmond Ridder's a solid quarterback. Luke Fickell is proven himself as a great coach. He's put the Ohio State interim season behind him. And I think Cincinnati, even with 2 losses, is definitely contending for a top 15, top 10 team. It's time to treat Cincinnati like a Power 5 team that it has been for the past year or two under Luke Fickell. Number 9, Florida. Now, this is probably where it's getting a little uncomfortable because Florida's lost a lot. Unlike most teams on this list, they don't return a majority of their starters. And this is simply because I look at how Emory Jones played against Oklahoma, and I'm not saying he's elite. I'm not saying he's going to win the Heisman, because he won't. But they have a good enough quarterback, like they did with Felipe Franks, like they did with Kyle Trask in year 1, to win 10 games. Their losses will be to Georgia and Alabama, who are, I'm just going to give you a hint, top 4 teams in my rankings. Really good teams is who they're going to lose to. They're going to go 10-2. I think they're going to beat LSU. I think they're going to beat Kentucky. Both of those games, I believe, are on the road. But I have faith in Dan Mullen and his amazing staff who All but the OC who left for the NFL is still there. Consistency is nice, especially after a COVID season. And Todd Grantham will at least get the defense to be somewhat bearable again this year with spring practice and such. After Florida, we have Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin is a team that I am very high on, but the reason I don't rank them ahead of teams in front of them is because they have a weaker strength of schedule, and they've went undefeated before and then lost to a not-so-elite Ohio State game in the 2017 Big Ten championship game. Wisconsin, I think, will go undefeated in the regular season, which is a first for a lot of teams in this top 25. I don't think that's even possible with a lot of teams in this top 25. Wisconsin's toughest opponents, Penn State, Notre Dame, and Michigan, are at home or neutral site games. They don't have one tough game away from home. And they return, like a lot of other teams, a lot of people. You got Jack Sanborn anchoring that linebacker group on the defense. You got probably one of the best O-lines, if not the best in the country. You have Graham Mertz, who, if he can get to just near blue chip level, Wisconsin could win the Big Ten. And if Jalen Berger's healthy, that could provide a good running game on the ground too, along with Clemson transfer, I think Chez Malusi. And after Wisconsin, who will represent the Big Ten West in the championship game, Big Ten championship game, you have Iowa State. And Iowa State here has one of their best teams. This will probably be their best team in school history. I think they'll win 11 games. They'll fall to, I have Kansas State on the road, but if it's not Kansas State, it'll be to probably some road team in the Big 12. I don't think this team will go undefeated, but they will, I do think, they beat Oklahoma on the road. It's just kind of tradition. Iowa State is able to get in Oklahoma's head. It's like same thing with Kansas State. You get good coaches at these small schools, and they can beat Oklahoma. And with Breece Hall at running back, with Brock Purdy at quarterback, and with Matt Campbell as your head coach, that's a scary duo to face. I think they get the win against Oklahoma in the regular season, but in the same case with Cincinnati beating UCF in the regular season, in the end, Oklahoma will come out on top. And I'm more certain of that than I am of UCF beating Cincy. Oklahoma will win in the championship game. It's just is how it is, in my opinion. Oklahoma just has the advantage in the championship game. They've been there several times. I don't think they've lost ever since the championship game's been reinstated in 2017. I don't think they've ever lost it either. Iowa State, by far in the Big 12, has the best chance to overthrow Oklahoma. It'll be a tight game, but I think Oklahoma, who's at 6th, takes the Big 12 crown and likely will get the 4th or 3rd or 2nd, I don't think 1st though, with the one loss, playoff spot. And Spencer Rattler, I do not think is a Kyler Murray or a Baker Mayfield. I'm actually kind of low on him winning the Heisman compared to a lot of people. But Lincoln Riley always has strong offenses, and Alex Grinch last year led a competent Oklahoma defense, and we saw this in the Cotton Bowl. Granted, Florida was without some of their best wide receivers and stuff, but still, Oklahoma's defense after those two losses stepped up. They did something I've never seen them do, and they would dominate. They dominated Oklahoma State. They just dominated all across the board, and when teams would slow down their offense, their defense would take the cruel hits and take a punch for the team and not just force the offense to hurl itself. The defense would step up and stop the other team from scoring. And I just haven't seen Oklahoma do that. I have them at 6th, which could be considered a little low, but in the end, I do think they will take the 4th playoff spot. I just need them to prove themselves. At 5th, you got Clemson. And Clemson returns DJ Uiagalelei, Travis Etienne, and Trevor Lawrence. Really good quarterback running back duo, which is important. They were drafted, but you have Justin Ross returning from being out in 2020, and that will be DJ Uiagalelei's probably best target. A lot of the defense returns, but after being exposed against Ohio State, I am curious as to see how well they will still face. Because when you're exposed, other teams are going to come at you as hard as they can. And this is what I say about 2020. They look at teams being exposed, these smaller schools. They look at the big schools being exposed horribly, because that's what happened all throughout 2020, and they're going to come at these big schools harder than they ever have. And number 4, you got the Buckeyes. Now, the Buckeyes rose 2 spots in my rankings in August, and that's because I look at them, and I still do think they're losing to Minnesota. Hate to say it, but outside of that, they're going to have likely one loss, and it's because the new quarterback, because the secondary still needs time to readjust. After that, this team is more than a playoff team. This team could be a national champion. Like, even without Justin Fields, even with a quarterback that's likely worse than Fields, with Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jeremy Ruckert. I've said it so many times that on the defense, you have guys like Haskell Garrett, Jack Sawyer, and JT Tuimoloau will likely even get some playing time with a defensive line rotation. Sevyn Banks anchors the backfield. And I've talked about Ohio State so much. Them and Michigan are my favorite teams to talk about. I love the game, if you haven't figured that out already. I think it's the greatest rivalry ever, even in its current state of dormancy. However, Ohio State is just, they're on it. And they just seem to find new ways to win and never lose in the regular season. But this year is going to be the first year they lose to a Big Ten team in the regular season. It won't stop them from beating Wisconsin in the championship game. And number 3, we have 3 SEC teams in the top 3. This may get some pushback, but as I said, it's the year of Saban assistants. We have Texas A&M at 3rd. Texas A&M I have at 3rd. Because I think their one loss will be to Bama, who I have as number 1. I can say that now. And it's going to be a close game. Haynes King looks to be the starting quarterback. You have Isaiah Spiller and Devon Achane like in the running back room. That's a very dynamic running back room they have right there. They return a huge bulk of their defense, which was, unlike Alabama, the defense is what was A&M was known for. Their offense with Mond struggled, especially the LSU game, and their defense was far strong enough to just help them get out of some tough positions. Their defense forced a fumble against Florida and beat Florida as well. Their defense is very capable, and that is what they will be known for. And who knows? I have a feeling that Kellen Mond was like the E.J. Manuel of Florida State. Good, but he was holding them back just a little. And I wonder now that Jimbo's is now going to start the guys he recruited, I believe, or guys he's developed for longer, if we maybe get to see an E.J. Manuel to half to Jameis Winston improvement. Probably not that drastic, but it is possible. Number 2, you have Georgia. Now, Georgia and Alabama, I think they're going to be in the SEC championship game, and I think whoever wins that game will be the team to win the national title. That's just what I think. Georgia, I do think, will beat Clemson week 1, even though with Eric Gilbert being out now, and what is his name? George Pickens with the ACL tear looking very unlikely he'll play. It's looking more and more in Clemson's favor. I still do think Georgia pulls it out. And I think this is because Clemson facing a team that is far tougher than most teams they face in an opener. They do have Georgia has a great quarterback that I think can match Clemson's. I think Georgia at the moment definitely has the better running backs, and they have a defense that faces tougher competition constantly. Granted, when it comes to defense, Georgia doesn't have as many returning starters as Clemson. That week 1 matchup determines a lot, as many already know. Georgia will represent in the East Division. They will represent them in the championship game. And unfortunately for Georgia fans, lose to Alabama, and they will probably miss the playoff. likely along with Texas A&M in all these scenarios. But just because you miss the playoff, if I think Bama's really good, and we're going to talk about number 1 Alabama, Bama's really good. If you beat everyone else and lose to them, and I have Alabama being the national title, I still kind of justify in my mind why these other SEC teams are ahead. It's just my opinion. Again, Alabama, they do lose a lot on offense, but I think Saban has perfectly, in his genius, copied that 2019 LSU offense. He's done it. Perfectly done it. And Bryce Young will be a star. John Mechie III will be the Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, whatever. He'll be the star wide receiver of the entire group. Henry To'oTo'o will be in probably the best linebacker group of the country. Alabama, too, you got Bill O'Brien at OC, and I think was a genius hire. Pete Golding and Charles Kelly will command a defense that will be frustrating to deal with, and that will keep anyone from scoring nearly as many points as Alabama does on you. Alabama is my SEC champions. They will beat Georgia and A&M, and they, in my opinion, for now, are going to be they're going to be repeat national champions. That's all I have to say for this video. Make sure to subscribe so you can continue to see Saban's smiling face in the photo, and check out some of my other content. Leave your comments below and hit the notification bell so you can see more of my videos. I'm going to be doing a lot of post-game reviews. I'm going to try to watch as many games as possible as I can while juggling school and work and all of that stuff. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you around.